Hello, welcome to the next deep side talk with Amol Kadam from CEO RBBI. He's located in UAE in Dubai. Welcome, Amol. Happy to have you here.
Thank you, Hans. Thank you. Nice to be here again.
Amol talked about ethics in design at the World Usability Congress 2023. Can you summarize a little bit what you talked about?
So there are various aspects to ethics. First of all, when we say ethics, everybody has a different definition. But if you look at what ethics are, or what how from values to ethics to norms, and they become laws. So there is a evolution that our values that are very personal. Then it becomes ethics, which is the interactions and how we behave with others, and then they become norms. Like for example, when we get up in the morning, we say good morning, right? So it's a norm. It's not a law. It's not an ethic. It's not a value, but it's a norm. And then it becomes, things become law when everybody starts saying that. So ethics is very important. Ethics are very important. Why? Because we as designers, or we as creators, we have certain responsibilities. We have certain powers, and as they say, with great power comes great responsibility. So if you look at our power, what is our power? Our power is actually to design things, to create things, and use that power to pursue users, to take certain actions, to do certain things with our products, right? And that's where the ethics aspect comes in. Because when we have this power to create things, to actually get users to take actions that we want them to take, we need to be ethical about it. As you know, there are a lot of different things that have been happening recently, like, right from Cambridge Analytica to how social media is affecting young users and so on. But if you look at the persuasive design, that itself is actually used to sell, engage, and create trust within users. Now, when you have such power, such principles, such different tools in your hands, you need to use them ethically, which means we need to make sure that our tools, our powers are used for ethical reasons and not for unethical reasons. Now, there is another term in UX which is called dark patterns. So what are dark patterns? Dark patterns are our principles, laws, methods, and tools used in a wrong way. So the talk was about why and how we should be ethical when it comes to using these tools, using these patterns. And there is a very thin line between using our persuasion techniques and getting into the dark pattern. So my effort was to actually just start this conversation, because we tend to shy away from talking about ethics or anything related, anything which is tough or difficult to discuss. So the objective of the talk was to create this conversation and start this conversation from from the platform that we have, which is the World Usability Congress. So this was in a nutshell. This was the discussion.
When we talk about ethics, or when you talk about ethics, is it always? It was funny because you said when you have a great power, you also get a great responsibility. I read it right now every time when I read a book from my son, Spider-Man, and Spider-Man says this the whole time. So is this your personal ethics, or which you have for the world, or is there a global ethics which we as UX designer have to follow?
So right now, there is no code of ethics, or there is no guidelines on this, right? Because right now there is nobody who is governing this. Right now there is nobody, not many people are actually concerned or talking about this. But if you look at our personal ethics, there are so many ethics that we all follow. So my objective or my aim is to take these personal ethics and good for users, and actually move towards creating some sort of code for UX designers or UXers and practitioners to have these guidelines to follow when it comes to ethics. So yeah, right now it's a personal effort. However, we all know about dark patterns. So if you take those dark patterns, or if you see them anywhere, which means somebody is not being ethical. So we have that conscious amongst the community. That's why we are calling something dark patterns, but we don't have anything to go by to follow these ethical codes.
Himanshu is asking, ethics can be influenced by culture, customs, and perceptions. So as a designer, how can we design something that is globally acceptable?
Great. So Himanshu, if some of the discussion that we were having is, everything that we design. So there are products that are locally targeted locally, and there are products that are targeted internationally or globally. But when you talk about globally targeted products, they are still localized. And the ethics that we can start with are very generic. For example, when we go to platforms such as booking.com or airline websites, and they say only 2 seats left, or so many people have booked this in the past 24 hours, there is nobody who can verify this information for us, right? Only 2 seats left. Who are we to actually go and verify this? So if we start with basic code of conduct of not using these persuasive techniques or these patterns for pressurizing our users and so on, it is good enough to start with these basics rather than going into too many details of, oh, we shouldn't be doing this or should be doing this and so on. So for global products, it can be some basics, and at every whatever localization we are doing, that is also important to keep this in mind, that okay, what are the accepted cultural norms or ethics that are valid or applicable for that particular region.
Is there a global norm, or is strictly everything locally or customized at the end? Do we know something
so
like
this
that?
is the tricky one, right? Yeah, we can actually do something like that. We, as I think, even with the lot of these courses, lot of these online trainings, we don't talk about ethics. We talk a lot about different principles that you can use to persuade your users. If you have an e-commerce, use this, use that. There are various principles and methods we use, but we never talk about the borderline or the limitation of those principles. And I think it is important that we create some sort of basic guidelines, or at least create awareness within the design community to actually encourage them to think about it. One of the things that I always say, that when a client gets you on board to design a product, please keep in mind there is a very fine balance between, are you working for the client or are you working for your users? If you stick to working for your users, automatically you will be more ethical towards them rather than being loyal to your client and using these dark patterns to actually persuade your users, which may not be ethical.
I have an interesting question in regarding your answer right now. One of my employees, we should create a new newspaper app at the end, and he says, yeah, that's really tricky for him ethically, because at the end, also if you create the best newspaper app, if the journalists write political texts which is influencing the people in the wrong way, it's also something what's not ethical. So do you have a chance as a UX designer to say, no, I don't want to go further, or this is not my way I want to go, can you stop as a designer, or is the client the boss at the end? Or the same for me when I have the business. I was, hey, it's business.
Exactly. So it's, again, as I said, no, it's a fine balance, right? So you are, who's paying you? The client is paying you. Who's telling you to use different models? Like the hook model and various different models that we have. The hook canvas is a very famous model that people use to create a product, from triggers to actions, and to give reward to users, right? So when your client is actually hiring you and he's paying you, where do we draw the line? But at the end, what I think it has been established, that if you be more loyal towards users, uh, ultimately it is going to be beneficial for your client as well. But to go a little one step ahead, and to talk about what you discussed just now, um, creating, like, for example, if you look at Instagram, if you look at all the social platforms, we really don't question their algorithms. We don't really question the way they are actually influencing our thoughts. I think that is little too much that is happening, and the result of that is becoming very negative, like the depression rate, suicide rates. So it has reached a stage where these products that we all look up to, or draw inspiration from, are using some of these techniques, some of these algorithms that are actually not really ethical. So yes, there is a discussion that you can have with your client, and I'm sure, and I'm just being very optimistic about it. I'm sure many of your clients will understand the need and try to find a balance between, being business oriented or user oriented in a way.
Another question: how do you measure ethical design, or a framework to evaluate ethical design? Any research experience that can help us know how designers can evaluate and how users can evaluate?
So if I may, if I may be very transparent about it, there are very few discussions about ethical design currently, right? So I haven't come across any sure shot model of how you can measure ethical design. However, there are efforts, individual efforts done by a few individuals who are actually creating these return on investment models or effect of ethical design frameworks to be able to do this. Because the you know just the research experience can definitely help us to find out about these effects or and the impact of these ethical designs. But I think we need a little more than just the user research or research methods. I think we need a little bit more than that to come up with a model to show that, okay, these are the ethical design practices that we have implemented, and this is the impact, whether it's negative, positive, on the users and on the business.
Mm-hmm.
And people like you, Himanshu, Hans, and you, we, I think collectively, if we put our heads together, I'm sure we would be able to start just more than a conversation about ethical design.
So how do you see the future? Should we all talk much more about ethical design? Where is it going? Do you think this ethical design will be part of our daily routine?
So I think talking about it more is the definite first step that we all should look at. But I think wherever there is power to influence training materials, training modules, or course materials, I think just a small inclusion in these course materials, even if it's a, let's say if the course is 60 hours, for example, even having 5% time, or even less than that, an hour of time to let the student know about ethical design practices, or the concept of ethical design, is going to go a long way to plant that seed in the student's mind, so that he is able to have that and grow within his mind to when he sits down with the customer or a client or goes for an interview tomorrow, has that knowledge about ethical design and where is that fine line. I think that would be great to have.
Do you see a comparison between ethical design and sustainable design? At the end, is it a little bit the same, or is it really something different?
I think I wouldn't say it's the same, but there is a lot of overlap, because if you are being ethical in your design, I think you are going to take efforts for your design to be more sustainable. I think there are a lot of parallels, there are a lot of overlaps, and it could be, if the sustainable design is getting discussed more, I think ethical design concept would benefit a lot by piggybacking on sustainable design.
In that way, it's for me, it's a bit a little hard question. I think we can discuss ethics really, really long, and ethics is really different for every one of us. For example, you also
absolutely
talk or work for pharma industry, and if you really know pharma, it's, I think, I'm not convinced if it's every time ethical to get all the drugs and so on. So they sell more than they really have to sell, I'm convinced. And also doctors and so on, as I experienced in Austria, for example.
Correct.
So the question is, where starts the ethical thing and where starts our own feeling, our own area of ethical design?
I think the parameters of ethical design are going to be different for different industries, different for different type of business, and also the life cycle of the project or the product. I do agree that many a times following these ethical design or being ethical, because it's subjective, is not going to be beneficial for the product maybe, and that's why I feel that right now it has to be a very fluid idea, where depending or based on the life cycle, based on the industry, based on the product, based on the target audience, based on the outcome, I think the how deep you can go into ethical design or how you apply it is going to change from case to case basis.
So do you think it makes sense to say, okay, the overall industry is not that ethical, but I start with projects to do it more ethically and becomes step by step an ethical industry? I don't know.
Yeah. Did you guys see the recent interview when I say interview, the I think it was in front of US Congress that Mark Zuckerberg had to face some questions. I think one of the senator had asked him a simple question: what did you have for where did you stay last night? Can you tell us the name of the hotel and the room number? And Mark Zuckerberg said, no, I wouldn't want to share that. Then he said, can you go to your phone and tell me the last 5 people you messaged and what was the message? To which again he said, no, I don't want to share that information. So while he was answering, there was a laughter in the audience. That imagine if you and the senator went on to ask him, if you cannot share that information, how do you feel reading and going through all this information about your users? And everybody who messages on iMessenger or the Facebook Messenger, or people sharing their information with their loved ones, thinking that only they are seeing it. How do you tackle this? So to which Mark Zuckerberg replied, people know that it's they are signing up for it. So that's where I think it is it is there. So yes, I don't think by design or by by default we are all evil and non-ethical, but I think it's just the way we apply these practices and services.
A good question again from Himanshu. How can designers resolve conflicts of business and ethical design? Business is focused on bottom line. Any tips and any experiences you can share?
Just a minute. Sorry. Can you repeat that again?
Of course. How can designers resolve conflicts of business and ethical design? Business is focused on bottom line. Any tips and any experiences you can share?
Yeah. So I'll give you one example of an e-commerce store that we worked recently in Saudi Arabia, and there were talks about using certain persuasion techniques. Like for example, client was mentioning that why don't we show that only 3 products are remaining, so that based on this, people will be able to uh, you know will be able to have that pressure to actually buy that immediately. And this was just one example, right? uh, Based on, because client had on the client side there was a ux head of ux and team. They were actually pushing us to use certain practices that we felt are not ethical. I'll give you one more example. uh, in terms of the reviews, client was actually saying that when we are showing 5 reviews, why don't we show 50 reviews, but just show 5 of them recent 5, and just mention that way. So now is there anything non-ethical about it? Because it's a startup, they are starting new. Is it okay to accept this? Some people might say, yeah, because a startup needs to start somewhere, so let's accept this as a as something that is understandable. But in this conversation, when we actually brought in the word ethic, I think automatically clients started understanding that, yeah, I think this is something maybe we should not do. So there is, again, maybe at this point of time I do not have definite or clear answer as to how do we manage this, because there is no ethics code that we all can refer to. Like for example, when we have something which, for example, when we have the way we are showing error messages, or the heuristics that we have something as a reference point to go back to it. Right now it's just going to be a conversation and see how far we are able to push ourselves and where can we draw the line together. It cannot be done in isolation and leaving the client out of it. It has to be a conversation that you engage them.
But at the end,
let me ask.
yeah,
Sorry, let me ask Himanshu a question. Have you
of course.
come across in your in your projects or in any of your products? Have you come across this dilemma or this situation where you have done it, and now that you think about it, by using the word ethics, you would question it?
It's a difficult question because a lot of times requirements are driven by business, and at that point of
True.
time you can only discuss the merits and demerits of something. And if you're working with a client, the final decision lies with the client. You can only
True.
give
True.
advice. You are more of an advisor. If you
Correct.
are working for a product, you have your own team, plus you have other counterparts, in product, in engineering, in business, other aspects of business. So their point of view also matters. And this is one thing that comes all the way back to designers not having seat at the table. The designers ought to
Correct.
be at a C-suite level. Unless designers are at a C-suite level, it's very hard for designers to put forward their point of view without being shot down, or having an honest conversation about it at the senior most level?
I think the two things that I heard from that and very critical is the word advisor. I think to begin with, even if even if we start with advising our um, clients about these ethical practices, or where to draw the line, and as you know, not every advice is taken on board, right? So even if that it starts with that, and then obviously if designers have that table at the seat, or the whole table becomes full of this, I think that would be that is the ideal scenario. But I think just the a simple advice, and I'll tell you, this is what we did. So you asked that question about how do you resolve conflicts. All we did is, out of those I think around 4 or 5 different things that client was suggesting, all we did is we sent out an email, official email, saying that although we are doing these things, we do not accept and we do not advocate to using these practices, because we feel these are unethical. I think it starts from there, to just raise your hand and be that person who says that, okay, it is what we did was unethical. Whether client takes it or not, it's a different thing. Luckily, in a lot of our government clients or public sector, um, it is very easy to convince the public sector, because at the end of the day, just the use of word ethics and the public sector product, it becomes very when it comes to public sector.
Okay, thank you. I have another question, because you said ethically it's really different, cultural difference, business difference. For me, at the end, ethics always starts with the human. Otherwise, we don't talk about
Correct.
ethics. Is it possible to define some foundational rules about respect, about everything about the human? Say, hey, these are the foundational rules of ethics, and then we can go forward in different industries. But at the end, it's about not influencing in a bad way and also be good for the human.
Yeah, I think if we all, I mean, think we will all agree that the base of user experience is in the word is empathy, right? And if we actually look at empathy as a concept, it has deep roots in this concept of being human, being um, being right, or doing right thing for our users. I think that itself has the base to build upon, to say, okay, when we are like, for example, if we are actually putting this pressure, using these techniques to persuade our users, if we put our empathy and elaborate on that, I think we automatically would be able to put some human touch to it, and remove some of these fractions, or remove some of these unethical patterns.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a big conflict? Of course, it's always the same between business user, and at the end, it's technically possible. Do you see there a big conflict between creating something ethically when we discuss this with these other areas?
The straight answer is yes, there is a conflict. Or the short answer is yes, there is conflict. But the detailed answer, or the detailed would be, it's a give and take, right? It has to be a give and take between what is right for the business, and what is ethical for the users. Because I wouldn't call it right for the users, but at least if we have that discussion and have this conversation or a dialogue between these two, I think that is where it's going to start. But slowly, surely, as we are seeing the effects of non-ethical design practices being more and more damaging to users, I think the need is there, and also the opportunity is there.
I try to also ask differently. Is it our responsibility as designers to create ethical design, or is it
Absolutely
the company-wide? You say, okay, as a company, you have to define your ethics and your values, that all business developers, sales know their ethics and work together for their business-wide ethics? Or is this the first step?
I think we are the facilitator. I think we are the facilitator or initiator of this particular topic. Going back to the example that I gave you, while we were writing that email, I went back brand vision and mission and values, and I found the word transparency in it. And most brands would actually have these brand values, and I haven't seen a brand whose brand values or vision and mission are rooted or founded in unethical practices, right? So when I use that to explain that to the client, that your one of your first brand value is being transparent, I don't think we are being transparent by using these techniques. And I think that actually had a lot of impact on the client, and we were able to actually at least convince him not to use these fake numbers or fake persuasion practices. So I think we as a designer, we are the facilitators, because we stand and we say that we are going to be that person who's going to have more empathy for the users. Then
sorry, I didn't hear the last sentence.
So the last sentence was, if we call ourselves UX designers who are going to have empathy for our users, I think it is our responsibility and our role to stand for those users and be the facilitator or the initiator of this dialogue.
So the coming year at the World Disability Congress, we have a huge topic, transformation by design. So at the end, we as designers are transformers of companies. Is that right?
Exactly. So I think the transformation also should have, going back to the core values of we as a designer and client or the brand as their own core values.
So going further, we are transformers. So we not only product designers, we are doing everything. We change everything. To change managers.
Yeah, exactly. We are the change initiators, right? Like, for example, if we are okay to stand for sustainable design, I think it's a similar challenge. It's a similar dilemma. Not everything that is sustainable is good for the business. So I think at some point of time, it's the same thing that when it comes to ethics. So we are the transformation catalyst. I would say we are the catalyst for this change.
Thank you. Any other questions from the attendees here? If you have any questions, please write it down, or you also can ask more directly. I will come back to the question, how do you see the future as a UX designer in the area of ethical design, change management, or only as, because right now, most of these, the people learn Figma, a little bit research, a lot of prototyping, mostly product designers. But as you said, the topic is much bigger. So where do we transform ourselves into in the future?
I believe the conversation about ethical design is going to be more and more critical in the future, as you see more and more damage done to overall users. There is, there are people like Aral Balkan and a few others who are already doing a lot in this area in their own capacity. I think in future, as a designer, the role of the product designer or a UX person in the overall community is going to increase, because the differentiator for products is becoming design. It used to be, if you go 40 years back, product design was not the differentiator for anything that we were doing. However, today, the more and more power it's coming to people like us to make that difference. And I think as a UX designer, or as a designer or product designer, I think it's one of the aspects that we have to teach ourselves and be more aware of when it comes to ethics in design. And I think it is going to happen. I'm very optimistic about it.
Mm-hmm. So any tips or tricks in the area of ethics for all the UX designers out there? Or
I think it's one simple.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I think I can give you 2 pointers. One is go deeper on the word empathy for users. So I think if you do that is one. Second is just ask one question when you actually use any particular pattern or a persuasion technique. Just one simple question: is it good for the user or is it good for the business? And 9 out of 10 times you will find that it is always good for the business. And that is where you just need to have a conversation with your client to see if it's really good for the user as well. That's all to begin with.
This is one question from my side, because it's also really often discussion. Of course, we like the hook model. We tell them you can do that or that, you can buy that or that, but at the end, it's the decision of the user. We don't tell him he has to buy it. So is this ethical or not?
It's like if you remember in the talk, and I think first couple of minutes I asked one simple question. Tomorrow, imagine there is a new courier service that is starting, which will deliver your mails, your letters, your parcels anywhere in the world free of cost. How many of you would sign up for that? And I remember in the hall, I think around 90% of the people said, yes, we would definitely sign up for it. And I said, there's only one caveat. Before we deliver it to the recipient, we would just open the box, see what is inside, open your letter, read it carefully, put it back, pack it as it was, and then we will deliver. Now, how many people would sign up for it? And I remember only 2 people after that were ready to sign up for it. And I asked a simple question: do we ask the same question to Gmail? Do we ask the same question to other free products that we use currently? We don't. So I think the first key is the transparency. We don't know. We don't ask this question to Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo, is because like people like us who are in the business would know. Most of the users don't know that this is happening. So I think that is where as a thing, one first thing is the transparency. If everybody knows this, I think slowly users will also. You saw how many people are actually now deleting their Facebooks and Twitter and Instagram and social media accounts. Although it has become a fashion in a way, but also I think more and more users are getting aware of this.
So at the end, we should.
So although yes, we are just. I think slowly we will see that, like how Mark Zuckerberg said, well, they signed up for it.
Yeah. So at the end, we should be much more curious and ask much more questions.
Exactly. And that's the core. That's the core of any designer, isn't it?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Amol. If there are no more questions, any
Thank
questions?
you.
Then I say thank you for your introduction, your talk, and all your insights. Thank you. We will share this interview on the World of Experience, and also we'll share it afterwards. Thank you so much, and have a great
Thank
day.
you so much.
That was the
You
first
too.
step
Thank
to
you so
talk
much.
about ethics in
Thanks a lot.
design.
Exactly. I was just going to say that. Thank you so much.
Great.
And
Thank
see you
you.
soon. And